Week 3 of Found Footage Month brings us The Last Exorcism. This was directed by Daniel Stamm and written by Andrew Gerland and Hook Botko, who wins this week's That Is the Most Awesome Name award. It stars Patrick Fabian, Ashley Bell, Lewis Hertham and Caleb Landry Jones. And some may say, why have you included this? It's a mockumentary. Mockumentaries aren't found footage. But it is on a list of found footage films that I've used to figure out what I wanted to talk about this month. And you could argue that mockumentaries are at least a close cousin to found footage. Whilst found footage, as I described previously, the idea is perhaps that they weren't meant to be seen by a wide audience, it's still that idea that we're playing this off as something that really happened to people, and this footage is then being shown after whatever horrific things have happened. I think you can count mockumentaries in. I didn't do it for the entire month. This was my little, I guess, flexibility on the rules, because I do love this film. I'm not saying it's high cinema like I'm going to say throughout this entire month. None of these are high cinema, and that's fine. They live in a world, or, they live in a space for schlock, fun, and to be honest, all of the 4 actors I've mentioned gave amazing performances. Even, Iris and some of the other sort of extras, the side performers. Becky Fly particularly, she's great as Becky. They've kept a lot of the same names. But yeah, she's great. Her persona, even though she's on for minutes of this film, tiny amount of time, she still left an impact with me. But all of these people are absolutely smashing it out of the park. Of course, yeah, the core group, the Sweetser family and Cotton, are really going to be the standouts. And this was where I pretty much saw all of them for the first time. I may have seen Lewis in small parts in other pieces, but here he really sells this concerned dad who has sadly had his wife die and is struggling to keep his kids going. He's on the belief, or in the belief, that his daughter is possessed, whereas Cotton's coming in going, well, maybe she isn't, maybe she has no mother and she's having all these things go on in her life, her body's changing, all this kind of stuff, and she's getting accustomed to being a young woman, and you've got your son running around being angry all the time. It's a hard life, and maybe people just need some therapy. Throughout the film, Cotton is constantly trying to get them therapy. And he sells that so well, just this concerned father. But then Caleb Landry Jones, he sells this, will you leave my family alone at the beginning? He's like, this isn't exorcism, leave my family alone. He's really trying to get rid of them. Now, the end of the film changes perhaps the framing of why. I will grant that, if you believe the film is what it says it is, and we'll come to that later. But at the beginning, he sells that, I am a concerned brother, and do not do anything to mess with my family. And son, he's concerned for his dad as well. He sells that until the point that he realises it's all smoke and mirrors. At which point he gives the thumbs up. He's like, yep, you convince them you've dealt with it. I'm happy. Again, the end of the film frames why that might be the case. Patrick Fabian himself is just so likeable. He's so charismatic and charming. I could not see many other people taking the role of Cotton and doing it so well. There are other people, yes, who could have been this charismatic and eminently watchable. But the fact that he says, I'm going to bet you that I can put in a banana bread recipe into my sermon, and does it, and gets the crowd on side, that is a showman in every possible way. Whilst it's a very different angle, because of one of the modules I've taken this year about parapsychology, we have talked about James Randi, known as the Amazing Randi when he was a stage magician. And he spent his whole life as a skeptic. He would ask people with these outrageous claims of, bending spoons and things, do it under controlled conditions. I will give you this $1 million check that sits in my pocket at all times. When he sadly died, that check has not been cashed. And I get a feeling of that from Cotton, in a way. Whilst he's obviously come from religion, he is just doing it for the showmanship and basically for a paycheck. We see throughout, he's worried about his child, the hearing aids, things like that. And again, this will come up a bit later as some of the ideas of what the ending means. But, he has this concern. He wants to do good by his family, but he doesn't really believe in what he's doing. These exorcisms, we see all the effects that he uses. We see him setting up fishing wire to move picture frames. This is exactly what skeptics would do to say, look, I've just done all this as a simulation of what you're saying happens, and you believed it. What makes it any different to what your claims are? Why isn't someone else perhaps doing this to trick you? Or maybe you're just lying to me. He definitely comes at it from a very different angle. And I've saved the best for last in the... Well, actually, before I move off from Patrick Fabian, I do want to say that there's a moment where, he's saying he doesn't want to do this anymore, and he's dressed up all in the suit that you'd expect of this kind of country preacher, if you will. He says, maybe I could go into real estate. My first thought when rewatching it this time was, or maybe law, because 5 years later, of course, he was cast as Howard Hamlin in Better Call Saul, the prequel to Breaking Bad. So that's my view. Like, he survived this, technically. It was all smoke and mirrors, it wasn't real, and he went and became Howard Hamlin. He changed his name. Hey, if Saul can do it, or Jimmy can do it, why not him? But yes, my standout performer, Ashley freaking Bell, because I have not seen her in anything before, and nothing since, aside from the sequel to this, which I may cover in next month or two. But she does so well at the very sweet, very sheltered girl. And then there's a few moments where there's kind of creep factor. Then she goes absolutely feral, and she does a lot of bending. She has quite a flexibility anyway, and she has done ballet and things like that. She is a physical performer. From everything I've seen, and I've looked into it, I've double checked, I can't see any evidence that really any computer assistance was used. Maybe a little fine-tuning, but it's pretty much mostly, if not all, Ashley Bell contorting herself into these amazing, unnatural shapes. As someone with hypermobile joints myself, I respect it. It looks so terrifyingly good and convincing, because if you do stuff naturally and really in shot, it will always look better than slapping CGI monstrosities on everything. But I did mention before that I would talk about the flow of the film, the ending, because everyone and their dog has a theory. And I'm not going to talk about every single one, of course, that's not fair, that's not balanced at all, but I'm going to talk some of the ones that I can see some good arguments for. I think there's only about 3 really that I take. The first one is, it is exactly as we're being shown. There is a whole cult actually run by Pastor Manley, which is why Dad was not happy with the situation. And that one is, to me, the least believable, if I'm completely honest. We're meant to believe that, with all this stuff that Cotton's doing, that there's no real demon possessions apart from this very one case in this very small place. That wasn't meant to rhyme, but I like the fact that it did. It's just a bit convenient, and the fact that, you have Pastor Manley, you have Becky, you have all these people that we've seen involved. It's not just some randoms. We do have people that we know. It seems very convenient, but it does potentially explain why Caleb seems to be the one who decapitates Danny, the cameraman. It becomes this thing of, that's why he was quite happy with it all being like, yeah, you do your smoke and mirrors, you do what you want, because if they believe that the demon's done, we can carry on with what we're going to do, and they're not going to be prepared for it, and you'll have hopefully disappeared by that point. Again, even his first interaction, turn around because I don't want you there in case you ruin the plans. That's the only thing that you could argue really sells this potential outcome, that it is exactly as we see it. The second one is... Actually, is there only 2? Because I can't think of a third. But the second one, maybe a third one will come to me, is that it's all faked by Cotton. Maybe not all, but a good chunk of it. I don't think necessarily Lewis and Nell, maybe not even Caleb originally. Maybe when he comes to see them at first, they're not part of it, but he convinces them, maybe through some kind of payment system or whatever. My idea is he's done this as a film to sell, to get that money. Again, with the situation with his son needing hearing aids, etc., that comes up, he wants to make some money but doesn't have to keep wanting to go out on the road because he's far away from his family. So if he makes this film and it makes a lot of money, he gets royalties constantly, he can give that to the family. It's like, I know you had this situation, but I promise you it's not real, and you can really live comfortably if you help me do this. Becky is one of the linchpins for this, because earlier when he first goes to their church, she's like, oh, am I going to be in a movie? Oh, cool. Can I, am I going to have a massive party shooting right now? She's very eager to be on film. She's very happy with that. Pastor Manley's very happy to be on film. The fact that they took the roles as the cultists, it's absolutely believable. And like I say, we don't see any of the violence, really. Even the cat could be a swap in like it was actually, when you take it as this is an actual film. Obviously they didn't really kill a cat, so why couldn't Cotton have used the same techniques? We don't see the human kills, the cut on Caleb, good makeup effects, because technically again that's what it was in the film that we're watching. So why couldn't Cotton, with all his knowledge, all his skills, all his performance capability, why couldn't he have faked this? Maybe Daniel Stamm is a pseudonym for Cotton Marcus. Look at it that way, if that helps. And yeah, I can't think of the other one. I'm fairly sure there's another one. I mean, there's so many with films like this. There's so many theories people come up with, and even though I might be blanking on more, I'm sure there's more out there. So if you have either your own pet one that you've made yourself or something that you've seen online that you thought was quite interesting, please put a comment with any of these weird, wild, outlandish claims, and I'll see and have a chuckle at some of the more wild, out there ones. But I really did enjoy this film. Again, like all of these, it's not high cinema, but it knows what it is and it does it well, and it made me aware of some of these great actors who have gone on to do great things afterwards for the most part. So yeah, next week we're on to something similar to last week before we end on what I think is a very, very, very much a high. But I hope you'll join me for the rest of this month and everything coming after. But until next time, as always, thank you for watching and take care.